Masechet Shevuot Daf Chaf Zayin. A new Mishnah teaches Nishba lebatel et hamisvah velo bitel patur, lekayem velo kiyem patur. Shaya bedin sheheh chayab kedivrei Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. If someone makes a vow to not do a mitzvah, he says a vow, I am not going to eat matzah on Pesach. And then he ate matzah. He did not cancel the mitzvah, but rather fulfilled it. That's good. He fulfilled the mitzvah, and he is not liable for overriding his vow, because a vow to annul a mitzvah is an invalid Shevuot in the first place. So even though he vowed, I'm not going to eat matzah, don't listen to that vow. Ignore it. It's not a valid Shevuot. Lekayem velo kiyem patur. And the opposite, if he makes a Shevuot to fulfill a mitzvah, he says, I am going to eat matzah on Pesach, and then he did not eat matzah on Pesach, he also is exempt from bringing a korban olev yored for his Shevuot. He did not fulfill the mitzvah, but that's a separate issue, that he didn't fulfill that mitzvah that he spoke about of eating a matzah. However, that we learn from here also that just as one cannot make a Shevuah to not do a mitzvah, one also cannot make a Shevuah to do a mitzvah, because both of them are already commanded. You're commanded to do the mitzvah or not to do the sin, and so making a Shevuah upon that which you are already commanded to do or not do is null and void. Now, this last part is a chidush, because we might have reasoned, based on a kal vachomer, that one would be liable if you made a vow to fulfill a mitzvah, and that's exactly what Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera does say. So this is Tanakama against Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. What's this kal vachomer? Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, Ma im hareshut she'eno mushba alav mahar Sinai, hareu chayav alav, mitzvah shu mushba aleha mahar Sinai, eno din sheheh chayav aleha. He reasons, if something that's optional, like if you say, I'm going to eat, or I'm going to sleep, within the next 6 hours, or tomorrow. These are things that are optional. You could do it if you want. You could do it if you don't want to. You don't have to. So those things where there is no obligation from Har Sinai, and yet if you say, I'm going to eat wheat bread tomorrow, then you are liable to, and you have to do that. If you don't do it, you're liable to Korban Chatat. Then mitzvah, something that you are already obligated to do from Har Sinai, all the more so, you should be liable if you make a vow. In other words, if a vow applies to something that's optional and you have to keep that vow or else, then certainly the vow should apply to something that you already have to do, that you're even more responsible because it's already a mitzvah, and now you added a further Shevuah. For sure you would be liable if you don't do it. Amru lo, im amarta b'shvat hareshut sheken nasa ba'alav kehen, tomar b'shvat mitzvah, b'shvat mitzvah. But the rabbis responded to Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera and said, no, you can't compare them. If you would say a Shevuah applies regarding something that's an optional act, then yes, we agree to that, because we can compare the positive to the negative. You could just as you can say, I will eat tomorrow, you can say, I won't eat tomorrow. And both of those are optional actions, and you could do one, you could do the other. And so it has to match. If in order for a Shevuah to be valid, it has to be that you can say it in the positive and the negative. However, regarding a Shevuah of a mitzvah, that I'm going to eat matzah on Pesach, there you cannot say the opposite. If you say, I'm not going to eat matzah, then that would be invalid. So just as the negative is invalid, so too the positive is invalid. And therefore, you cannot compare a optional act to a mitzvah act, because the mitzvah act, since you can't say it in the negative, you also cannot say it in the positive. I mean, you can say it, but it won't be a valid Shevuah. You won't be liable to bring a korban chatat if you violate it. Tenor Banan. And now we have a baraita that elaborates on the Mishnah. You might think that if you make a vow to nullify a mitzvah, to say, I'm not going to eat matzah on Pesach, and then you ate matzah, you might think you'd be liable to bring a korban, olev yored, for violating that Shevuah. Tamud domar lehara o lehetib. Ma hataba reshut, af hara'a reshut. Osi nishba lebatel ta mitzvah, velo bitel shehu patur. Therefore, the Torah teaches us to do bad or to do good. Just like regarding doing good, that has to do with something that is optional. So too, doing something bad has to relate to something optional. And that will exclude someone who makes a vow to not perform a mitzvah, and then he ended up performing the mitzvah, that he is patur. So we learned that nullifying a mitzvah is not valid from the fact that lehara, that would be lehara, and it has to be the same as lehatib, and lehatib is for the shoot. So now that's point number one. Now we're going to learn the opposite. Now you might think that if you make a vow that I'm going to do a mitzvah, and then you didn't do it, maybe you would be liable to modomad lehara or lehetib. Therefore, the Torah says lehara or lehetib, to do bad or to do good. Mahara reshut afataba reshut. Just like the negative is something that is optional, so too the positive, it has to be something that's optional. And that will exclude someone who makes a vow to perform a mitzvah and then does it. He is also patur. Now this seems to be circular because we're learning the not doing it, the hara'ah, from the fact that hatava is optional, and we're learning the doing it, the hatava, from the fact that hara'ah is optional. Okay, the Gemara in a minute is going to elaborate on this. Now what if someone made a vow to do bad to oneself? We're understanding lehara here as a sense of moral bad. Let's say someone makes a vow, I'm going to harm myself, I'm going to hit myself, and then he does not do it. Will he be not liable? No, he is liable. Talmud Omar lehara or lehetib. Mahatava reshut, af hara'a reshut, avi nishba lehara le'atzmo ve'lo hera, shareshut beyado. Therefore, again, we learn lehara or lehetib, just like doing good. Let's say someone says, I'm going to do good for myself. I'm going to get a good rest. I'm going to eat healthy. And so that's an optional thing that is good for oneself, and that would be valid. So too, if someone says, I'm going to harm myself, that would be valid. There is a machloket in Baba Kama about whether you're allowed to harm yourself or not. Are you allowed to hit yourself, make yourself bleed, do something that's negative for your own health? That's a machloket. This is assuming that it's permitted. It's not a good idea, but if someone really wants to do that, it's permitted to do so, and so therefore it's considered reshut. So if someone makes a vow that they're going to hit themselves, then that's a valid vow. So we include someone who's going to do negative to themselves because that's optional. The Baraita continues, what if you make a vow to hit someone else and then you didn't hit them? Would you be liable? Talmud Omar lehara or lehetiv mahatava reshut afara'a reshut osi nishba lehara la'acherim ve'lo hara she'en hareshut beyado. Therefore the pasuk says to do bad or to do good. Just like doing good is something optional, so too doing something bad. And here we're understanding ra'ah as something morally bad, because you say I'm going to hit someone, even though that's an affirmative. I will hit someone, but it's bad in the sense of morally bad. So just like doing something morally good, if I say I will do good for someone, I'm going to give someone a present, then that would be obligatory, that would be liable. So too, in the negative, has to be something that is within your power to do, something permitted, reshut, optional. But that would exclude saying I'm going to hit someone or I'm going to do bad to someone, and then he didn't do it, because that's not optional. You're not allowed to hit someone else. So that's the difference. Since, according to this Baraita, I'm allowed to hit myself, if I make a vow I'm going to hit myself, that's valid vow. But if I make a vow I'm going to hit someone else, because I'm not allowed to hit someone else, that's not a divided reshut. Therefore, it's the same as making a vow against the Torah. I am not allowed to do that, and the vow is not valid. Minayin l'rabot hatabat acherim. Talmud Omar ol lehetiv ve'ezo hi hara'ah la'acherim aket peloni ve'efsat mocho. Now, how do you know that you can make a vow to do good for others and that will be valid? We learn it from the word o. We had lehara, and then we have o lehetiv. It could have said lehara ul hetiv. Why do you need an extra word o? That teaches me that doing good for someone else is valid. Now, what does it mean when we said doing bad to someone? It means if someone says, I'm going to hit that person and I'm going to break open his skull. That If you say about someone else, I'm going to vow to do that, it's invalid. But if you say I'm going to help someone, then that is valid. Now, that's the Braita ends, and now we're going to wonder about this Braita. How does the Braita know that lehara ulehetiv is talking about an optional matter? Dilma b'dbar mitzvah ketibe. Maybe lehara ulehetiv is in fact talking about a mitzvah in the first place. And those when this is understanding would be of the pasuk lehara ulehetiv. If someone makes a vow, lehara means to do an avera. Lehetiv means to do a mitzvah. Or lehara could mean to not do a mitzvah. Maybe the pasuk is about primarily if I make a vow relating to not doing or not doing a mitzvah, then have to bring a korban chatat. That's where it applies. But if it's something that is optional, then who cares? That's insignificant. If I say I'm going to sleep or eat, that's insignificant, and it wouldn't apply there. So the pasuk is not clear. How do you know that lehara or lehetiv means an optional thing? Because that's what we learned in the Braita when we said, how do you know? Maybe it means saying I'm going to do a mitzvah or not do a mitzvah. No, we compare it to lehara and to lehetiv, which we assume both are optional matters. How do you know in the first place that lehara lehetiv is optional? Maybe it's referring to mitzvot only. La sakadatech. No, don't think that. Debainan hatava dumya dehada'a v'hada'a dumya dehatava. Because it has to be comparable. You need the good to be the same as the bad, and the bad to be similar to the good. So we're going to compare the bad to the good. So just like good is not going to be canceling a mitzvah, because if it's good, then even in the sense of moral good or religious good, then it's not going to be canceling a mitzvah, because that would not be good at all. So just like hatava cannot be about canceling a mitzvah, so too hada'ah cannot be about canceling a mitzvah, because it has to be similar. Hada'ah gufa hatabahi. From here we learn that when it says hada'ah, it can't refer to something morally or religiously bad. It has to be something that actually is good. Like if you say, I'm not going to eat unhealthy or something like that. So it's a negative, it's a negative, a logical negative. I will not do something, rather than something that is against the Torah or something morally bad. We're not including that. So that's how we know that hada'ah cannot mean something that is against a mitzvah. And the other way around, something that's good has to be similar to something that's bad. Just like regarding something bad, you wouldn't say, oh, I'm going to fulfill the mitzvah. If you say, I'm going to fulfill the mitzvah, then you wouldn't call that ra'ah. Or if you say, I'm not going to eat hametz on Pesach, you wouldn't call that ra'ah, because that's a good thing to do. So just like ra'ah would not include fulfilling a mitzvah, so too hatava will not include fulfilling a mitzvah. And so therefore we see hatava itself doesn't mean morally good or religiously good. It just means that I'm going to do something. And so in that sense, it's the same as hada'ah in that it does not involve fulfilling a mitzvah. It's not negative in the sense that I'm not going to do something. It's positive, but it cannot mean that I'm vowing to fulfill a mitzvah. It has to be something that is morally and religiously neutral. That's how I learn that lehara or lehetiv in the pasuk has to be talking about something that is optional, an optional action and not a mitzvah. Now we ask, if you're going to use this logic, you can apply a similar logic to something optional. And you can say, well, how do you know that hatava means something something positive that I'll do that is optional, like I will eat barley bread, which is just optional? Well, you can argue the same thing. No, you can't say that, because there has to be the opposite also true. The hada'ah has to be similar to hatava. And if you say the hada'ah, not eating barley bread, that's not religiously bad. And if that's not religiously bad, you can't say that the positive negative is something that is optional. So, because it has to be just like the negative is something religiously bad, the positive has to be something religiously good. So it has to be about a mitzvah, and vice versa. In other words, this logic is assuming itself already. It's circular, and you can make a similar argument regarding the shoot. So therefore, that whole argument that we just brought, and we tried to knock our heads to figure out what that meant, is not valid. Rather, we're going to learn it from a simpler way. In a simpler way, Ela midis terich o lerabot hatavat acherim shma'mina b'dabar hareshut ketibeh. Rather, from the end of the Braita. Why in the end of the Braita it asked, how do you know that if I say I'm going to do good for someone else, that's valid? Because it says the word aw. Now, why do you need the word aw to come and teach me if I do good to someone else that is valid? It must mean that the pasuk in general, lehara and lehetiv, is talking about something optional. Why? Because if you would think it's talking about the lehara or lehetiv is talking about something religiously good or religiously bad, to do a mitzvah or not do a mitzvah, then that means I would include even hitting someone, right? Because you said even something that is against the Torah would be included. So if hitting someone would be a valid mitzvah, then for sure helping someone would certainly be a valid Shevuot, because that's certainly something good according to the Torah. So if something, even hitting someone, is a valid mitzvah, is a valid Shevuot, then certainly helping someone would be a valid Shevuot, and I would not need the extra word "or" to teach me that helping someone is a valid Shevuot. And therefore, it must be that the pasuk, mi lehara and lehetiv, those words are referring to optional things, and that's why I have to know, well, since they're only talking about optional things, doing an optional thing, not doing an optional thing, eating barley bread, not eating barley bread, that's all that's included in there. I would not know that if I help someone, which is a mitzvah, kind of a mitzvah, like you don't have to do it, it's not like you have to eat matzah, this is something that you can do, it's an opportunity. So how do I know that that's included? Well, since the lehara and lehetiv only refer to optional things, I need to teach me that, helping someone, yes, that's a valid mitzvah. So for the fact that it has to include the word to teach me that's how I know that the pasuk without by itself is referring to optional matters. Now we ask, hold on, I can't use the word to teach me that a vow to help others is valid, because I need the word to separate between lehara and lehetiv, because otherwise I might think, when am I obligated to bring a korban olev yored? Maybe only if I make a vow lehara and violate it, and also another vow lehetiv and violate that. Maybe I have to make a vow lehara and another vow lehetiv and violate them both, and only then I have to bring a korban. So I need the word to say, no, only one or the other. And so we answer to that, lechalek la tzarich kera. No, you don't need a word to separate. Nobody would really think that you have to make two vows in order to and violate them both in order to be obligated to a korban. That's kind of obvious. It's just a natural reading. Well, the natural reading that we said is okay according to Rabbi Yonatan, but not according to Rabbi Yoshia. We would still have a question. Where do we see their machloket? De Tanya, ish asher yikalel et aviv ve'et imo, en li ela aviv ve'imo, aviv ve'lo imo, imo ve'lo aviv benayin. Tamod omar aviv ve'imo kilel, aviv kilel, imo kilel, dibre Rabbi Yoshia. We have a braita. It's going to have two opinions. First, Rabbi Yoshia. The pasuk says a person who curses his father and his mother. It says et aviv ve'et imo. Okay, so I only know from here that if he curses en li ela aviv ve'imo, maybe it means both, because it doesn't say a separating word. It just says et aviv ve'et imo. I could read it. Someone who curses his father and his mother, he will get the death penalty. But maybe that means he has to curse both of them. But if he cursed only one, only his father but not his mother, or his mother is not his father, how do I know that that person also would get the death penalty? That's why I have another other pasuk that says Aviv ve'imo kilel. So it says Aviv ve'imo. There's an extra pasuk. Aviv kilel, imo kilel. So either his father he cursed or his mother he cursed. Then that refers to one or the other. So I have two pisukim because if without two pisukim, I would think that you have to curse both parents in order to be liable. So now I know that only one. So that's the opinion of Rabbi Yoshia. Rabbi Yonatan omer mashma shenehem ke'echad, mashma echad bifnei atzmo, ad sheyifrotecha katub yachtav. Rabbi Yonatan says it can mean both together, and it can mean only one, each one separately. And in fact, you're going to assume that it means each one separately, unless the pasuk says yachtav, both of them together. For example, when the pasuk says you shall not plow with an ox and a donkey together, that means it has to say the word together, because otherwise, without the word together, I would think either one alone or the other alone. Otherwise, why do I have to say together? That means, and if the Torah wants to say both of them, it'll say yachdav. If it doesn't say yachdav, you can assume it's one or the other. And so over here, since it doesn't say asher kalat aviv et imo yachdav, if it doesn't say yachtav, I already know lechalek. So according to the Bionatan, if you don't have any extra words like, you can assume that it's separate. It's like if you have lehara or lehetib, if you just said lehara ul hetib, you would assume that it's separate. The word o is not necessary to say lechalek, as long as it doesn't say lehara ul hetib yachdav. If it said yachdav, then you have to do both of them. Without yachdav, you can assume that it is separate. And that's the natural reading. So according to the Bionatan, this is fine. We know it's separate, and the word "o" is extra to teach us what we just wanted to learn. However, according to the Yoshia, he needs an extra pasuk in order to teach me father or mother. So he needs the word "o" to teach me that the lechalek, that if you say a vow positive or negative, one or the other, one is liable. So according to the Yoshia, where will he learn the fact that you exclude a mitzvah from liability, doing a mitzvah or not doing a mitzvah? Afilu tema Rabbi Yoshia. We can answer for Rabbi Yoshia. Sabar la Rabbi Akiva de darish ribui meut vayitale o lechalek. Rabbi Yoshia can follow the methodology of Rabbi Akiva, which we saw in the previous stuff. He does ribui, meut, and ribui in the pasuk. It has inclusion, exclusion, inclusion. And we said, well, that includes everything except one thing, one category. What does it exclude? It excludes a mitzvah. So we already know from that methodology that a vow regarding a mitzvah is invalid, and therefore we have all is extra, and we can use that to separate one or the other. If you say that this pasuk is talking about optional matter, and that's how we're interpreting it, regarding optional matters, then it makes sense that when you're excluding something, well, you included all optional matters. So what is it excluding? It must be excluding Davar Mitzvah. But if you think that Lehara or Lehetiv is including Davar Mitzvah, then what would it be excluding? If you're obligated regarding a vow for a mitzvah, then also you'd be obligated for a vow for optional matters, and then there'll be nothing to exclude. So therefore, we don't need the word o, that's lechalek. And the ribui, miut, and ribui, it has to include something and exclude something. Well, that would make sense if it's including reshut and excluding mitzvah. If it was including mitzvah, then it would include everything. And so now we have an explanation, a source, both for Rabbi Yonatan and also for Rabbi Yoshia. Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera ma'im hareshut. The next part of the Mishnah has the statement of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. He learns a kal vachomer that one should be liable if he makes an oath to do a mitzvah, because if in an optional matter, when one makes a vow to do something, then it's valid, then all the more so if someone's already commanded from Har Sinai to do so, then he makes a vow, then all the more so he will be liable if he doesn't keep it. So that sounded like a good kavachomer. However, the rabbis say, no, you cannot compare a mitzvah to an optional matter, because in a mitzvah, you cannot make a vow not to do the mitzvah. Whereas in an optional matter, you can make a vow to not eat or to not do whatever you want to do. And therefore you can't compare mitzvah to something optional, because in the negative it doesn't work. Therefore, and also in the positive, you cannot make a vow to do a mitzvah. So Gemara says, "V'Rabbanan shapir kamri leRabbi Yehuda ben Betera." The rabbis have a good point against Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. What will he answer? Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera amar lach, atu hatabat acherim, lav af agav deleta bichlal haraat acherim v'Rabbi Rachamana, hachaname b'kiyum mitzvah, af agav deleta b'tul mitzvah, Rabbi Rachamana. Rabbi Betera says, here's what I could take. Here's what he could say to you. The Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera could answer the rabbis that look at the vow to do good for others. We learned that from the word "o," that is valid. You can make a vow to do a favor for someone else. Now, there, even though one cannot do bad to someone else, if one makes a vow, I'm going to harm somebody else, it's an invalid vow. So here we have a case where the positive is a valid vow, whereas the negative is not a valid Shevuot. So we see we have a precedent. So here too, regarding fulfilling a mitzvah, one can say it's the same as helping a friend, even though you cannot say that I won't eat matzah. That's not valid, but you can say a vow that I will eat matzah. So that should be perfectly fine, because the word "o" included helping a friend. So say that it included also doing a mitzvah in the positive, even though that you cannot say vow it in the negative. V'Rabbanan, okay, now that point is so strong. How are the rabbis going to counter that? And the answer is hatam iteh belo etib, hacha mi iteh belo akayem. The rabbis will say that when it comes to helping someone else, you can make the opposite. The opposite of doing good for someone is not necessarily doing bad against them, but rather not doing good for them. So just like one can say, I will give that person a birthday gift. And that's valid, because you could say, I won't give the person a birthday gift. That's not an evil. That's not harming the person. It's just not doing good. So you see that when it comes to helping a friend, you can do an opposite. I will give him a gift. I won't give him a gift. But here, what are you going to say? I will eat matzah. Can you say, I won't eat matzah? No, then you're nullifying a mitzvah. So you see the rabbis say that we maintain the distinction that in the case of a optional matter, you can say the positive and a negative. When it comes to a mitzvah, you cannot say the negative, and therefore the positive doesn't work. And this rule is even true regarding helping a friend. Although helping a friend is a good thing to do and is even a mitzvah, it is valid because there is a negative. The negative is not helping the friend, which is not an averah. So that's optional to help him or not. So that's why, even though it's a good thing to do, it is also an option. You can do the mitzvah or you cannot do the mitzvah. The opposite is not harming the person. Next Mishnah. Shevuah shelo ochal kikar zo. Shevuah shelo ochelena. Shevuah shelo ochelena v'achala eno chayav ela achat. If someone makes a shevuah, I will not eat this loaf. And then after that he says, another shevuah, I will not eat it. And then again, I will not eat it, and he eats it. He is liable only to one korban, because it's already prohibited in the first Shevuah. He says, I'm not going to eat this loaf. So when he says, I'm not going to eat it, that's adding the same thing onto what was there before. And you can't add something if you're not adding something more, like a isur kolel, isur mosif, if you're going to prohibit more people or more things. But here, it's just a Shevuah on the same very loaf. So the second and third Shevuot do not apply. Zoi Shevuat bitui shechavin al zedona makot v'al shigata korban olev yored. And this is an example of a Shevuat bitui, a vow that you make by uttering words, for which one is liable. If you do it on purpose, lashes. And if you violate it by mistake, then a korban olev yored. It's a vow to do something. That's a good example. Shevuat shav chayvin al zedona makot v'al shigata patur. Whereas a vain oath, that's just by saying this thing that's made out of stone, you say it's made out of gold. That's just false on its face, not something that is about something that your actions, where you can make it happen or you did make it happen. This is just something that's obviously wrong to everyone who looks at it, who knows anything. So for that, if one makes a vain oath on purpose, one also gets lashes, but by mistake, It's not a korban, it's patur. Lama li limitne shevuah shelo ochal, shevuah shelo ochelena. How come the Mishnah says a different formulation? First it says, a shevuah, I will not eat this loaf. And then that I will not eat it. Is there a difference between saying I will not eat the loaf or I will not eat it? What's the difference? Why not just say the same language twice or even 3 times? Because the point is that the second one does not apply because it doesn't add anything new. So why say it in a different formulation the second time? Hakamash malan tamad amar shelo ochal v'hadad amar shelo ochelena. Oh, the Mishnah is very precise and it's coming to teach us why is one liable only for the first Shevuah? It's only because first he said, I will not eat this loaf, and then he said, I will not eat it. There, only one korban. But if he flipped it around the order, and first he said, I will not eat it, and then he said, I will not eat this loaf, then he would be liable to 2. Why? Because they actually do cover different amounts. Kedarava, damarava. Shevuah shelo ochal kikar zo, kevan sheachal mimena kezayit chayav. Shelo ochelena eno chayav ad sheyochal et kula. Rava says there is a distinction between the 2 formulations. Someone says, Shevuah, I will not eat this loaf, then he is liable even if he eats 1 kezayit. When you say this loaf, it doesn't mean the whole loaf. It means I will not eat from this loaf. So once you eat a kezayit, you're already liable. Whereas if you say, shelo ochelena, I will not eat it, then you have to eat the entire thing in order to be liable, because you're saying it, meaning the whole thing. Therefore, if you say it in the order that it is in the Mishnah, shelo ochal kikar zo, that's a bigger prohibition. That prohibits even eating a kezayit. Therefore, the second vow does not add any new prohibition. So therefore, one is liable only for the first. But if you flip it around, and first you say, shelo ochelena, that only prohibits eating the entire thing. Okay, that's a lower level, less stringent prohibition, because you have to eat the whole thing in order to be liable. After that you say, I will not eat this loaf, and that means even a kezayit. So now you're adding a higher level prohibition. Now you'll be prohibited even for a kezayit. So that second vow does apply, and if you eat the entire thing, then you would be liable to 2 korban chatats. Shevuah shelo ochelena v'achala eno chayav ela achat v'chule. Hatu lamali. Back in the Mishnah it said, if someone says, I'm not going to eat this loaf, then he says the second one, I'm not going to eat it. Then the third one, I'm not going to eat it. So I understand why I need the first 2. That's what we just learned. But why do I need the third one in the Mishnah? That is exactly the same as the second one. What is it coming to teach us? Obviously, you just said once, even twice, I'm not going to eat the loaf, I'm not going to eat it. What's the third vow coming to teach us? It's coming to teach us that although one is not liable for the third one, you said 1 and 2 and 3, and then you ate it. You're liable only for the first one. You're not liable for the third one. So even though you're not liable to bring korban, the Shevuah still exists, such that if there would be some application, some way for it to go into effect, then you would be liable. It's not like you said nothing, it's hanging in the balance. So how would it ever be effective? The application would be as Rava teaches, that Rava says, if you would go, let's say you made 3 vows, like in the Mishnah, and you go to a chacham and you dissolve the first one, you do hatarat nedarim, and you dissolve the second one also, and then you eat the loaf, you're going to be still going to be liable to bring a korban chatat for the third one, even though the third one you would not have had to bring a korban chatat if the first 2 were still there. But it's still the Shevuah does exist. It does not like it just goes away altogether. It's hanging there, and if you nullify the one before, then it will apply. Lema mesaya'ale mishe nadar shete nezirot umana rishona v'yifrish aleha korban v'achar כך nish'ala rishona alta lo sheniya barishona. Perhaps we can give a proof for Rava's theory from a baraita. A baraita says, someone vowed to be a Nazir twice. I'm going to be a Nazir, I'm going to be a Nazir. In that case, he has to be a Nazir for 30 days. He ends it, brings his korbanot, and then he starts all over again, and they'll end that one. Now let's say he started off, and he counted the first one. He was on his Nazir for 30 days, and he separated a korban, but didn't bring it yet. So he's not finished the first Nazirut just yet. And at that point, he goes to a chacham and he nullifies the first vow that he made to be a Nazir. In that case, the 30 days that he observed as a Nazir count for his second vow. And that's it. He'll just bring that korban and then he's done with both of them. What do you see from here? That although he had in mind, he was being a Nazir to absolve the first vow that he made. If the first vow goes away because he nullifies it, the second one immediately comes in its place, and retroactively he was observing the second vow. So isn't that a good proof that the second one was hanging there until the first one goes away? So to here, at a vow, I made two vows, I'm not going to eat this, I'm not going to eat this, and then the first one goes away, the second one is hanging there, and then it comes in and applies, and I'd be liable. We answer, Hachi hashta, hatam nezirut mi ha'ita, techi maneh l'rishona, ba'emi hadar mimna l'sheniya belo she'ela, hacha shevo'ah sheniya mi'ita kelal. And we say, no, these are two different cases. You cannot bring a proof from the Nazir case to a regular Shevuot case, because in the case of Nazir, the second Nazirut is still there. Normally, he's going to have to be a Nazir for 30 days and then again a Nazir for 30 days. So nobody would deny that the second Nazirut still exists. The obligation actually still exists while he is the first one. While he is counting the first one, he's going to have to count the second one if he doesn't nullify. Whereas when it comes to the Shevuah, when he makes the first Shevuah, makes the second one on the same thing, so does the second one have any application at all? If he doesn't nullify the first one, the second has no application. So it could very well be that the second Nazirut applies, but the second Shevuah maybe does not apply. And so there's no proof from this baraita about Nazir to Rava's law about a regular Shevuah. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen ve'amen.